Well, it's almost here, the end of a year and the beginning of a new one. And 2020 will go down in the record books. From the once-in-a-century pandemic to a reckoning with racial and social justice to the end of a Trump era. But it's not over yet. And to help us break it down, we have with us today Delegate Cliff Hayes from the 77th District here of the General Assembly. And also, in the second hour, we want to hear from you. What was 2020 to you? You're listening to State of the Water, and I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. This is State of the Water. I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank all of you for joining us here on this last Sunday in 2020. And what a year it has been. Listen, when someone says, hey, Happy New Year, I simply say we made it. And by the grace and mercy of God, we're still here. So many things have happened. So many bad things have happened. But out of the bad, we've also had a lot of great things that happen to us, a lot of silver linings. And we have a special guest here with us, a friend of NSU, a friend of State of the Water, and definitely a friend of the Center for African American Public Policy and a friend of mine, Delegate Cliff Hayes, who represents the 77th District here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, to help us to talk about this year of 2020 and also what's upcoming in 2021. Delegate Hayes, welcome to State of the Water. How you doing, my friend?
Well, good afternoon, Dr. Claville. It's exciting to be able to come on today on WNSB Hot 91.1. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, look, it's always good to talk with you, my friend. And as I've stated before, you're a true friend of the university, your alma mater, definitely a true friend to the Center for African American Public Policy and Save the Water. And we just want to thank you for your support throughout the years and also while you're in the General Assembly. And look, this is the end of the year show, so we're going to let it hang out just a little bit. I thought to myself, who better to wrap up this year of State of the Water than the very person that opened it up for us when we launched on June 28th here in 2020. Again, I mean, you've been such a phenomenal example of what a true alum should be at NSU and taking the skills that you've learned and doing great things. So again, we just thank you so much for your support over the years.
Well, I just have to say it's extremely humbling and makes us very proud of the very fine work that you're doing there at the Center for African American Public Policy, along with many others, Dr. Newby, Alexander, and so many more. I just don't know how we would be able to get the message out in such the manner that we're able to all at one time to the community, if it were not for the great work that State of the Water is doing and sharing with the community and letting folks know what's been going on, what's happening now, and as we turn the corner, where we're headed. And so I'm certainly happy to be here on this second day of Kwanzaa as we talk about self-determination, trying to define and find our common interests and make the decisions that are best interest of our families and our community best we can. But we know none of us are on an island unto ourselves, and the more we work together, put our shoulders to the wheel, it's all for the betterment of the community as a whole. So I'm happy to be here on this day to share with the listening audience on the 27th, 2020, as we head towards 2021.
That's it. And, I think that's a great word to leave, to start the show off with, and we'll end the show with, is self-determination, because we all hold the keys to success in our hands. It's all depends upon what you want to do with it. And one thing that NSU does, it helps to give all of its students and graduates the keys to go out and be successful. And you're a perfect example of that.
I'm just happy to have been a recipient of the love and appreciation of my parents, Clifton and Carolyn Hayes, who, by the way, were Norfolk State alum as well.
That's right, behold.
And, yes, sir. Dad played on the very first baseball team there at Norfolk State. And then Mom was there, and they both worked in their studies there in college at Norfolk State. And we grew up on the green and gold. It's a part of us. I think if you cut me, I might bleed green and gold.
That's right. That's right. One thing, this show is a year in review. And I started off with, three things that I think that really helped to determine this particular year. And we know that we went through chaotic last 4 years, from the highest office of the land. But, we had two things that really affected us here on the ground, here in Hampton Roads. It's the once-in-a-century pandemic and also the reckoning with social justice. Could you talk a little bit about, just in retrospect, what the effects of the pandemic has done in your district and here in Hampton Roads, and also the reckoning with racial and social justice?
Yeah, Dr. Claville, I got to start off by pointing to the fact that I think it was 2018 when we literally were able to pass legislation in the Commonwealth providing health care and access to quality, affordable health care.
That's right.
For over 400,000 families.
Yes.
Here in the Commonwealth who did not have that access because Virginia's laws were so confined to what it meant for who was to benefit from Medicaid. Virginia laws said that a family could only make up to $7,000. What double talk and hypocrisy! On the one hand, folks are telling you you need to work, you need to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and make every bit of a living that you can, and then you can't be hired full time, but you're putting together 3 and 4 part-time jobs to make it all happen.
That's right.
But then yet the laws of the Commonwealth said that you made too money to get Medicaid. And so we know that stemmed from the fact that there was President Obama who pushed the Affordable Care Act. And as a part of the negotiations to get that passed, states had to agree to, in order to receive the money. So here, President Obama was providing the Commonwealth $5 million a day. And the Commonwealth of Virginia was giving him the stiff arm, saying that, no, we don't want that money. No, we don't want Medicaid expansion here. And so it took the courage of folks fighting. In fact, in the election of 2017, all of those delegates and the top 3 statewide officers, governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, all ran on this platform of expanding Medicaid.
Wow.
And, of course, there was a sweep amongst the Democratic Party, thank God. And, of course, there were a number of seats that were gained in the legislature, putting pressure on the other side that had been so stubborn for 5 years prior.
Wow.
So this was a 5-year fight. And ultimately, we were able to apply that pressure and get Medicaid expansion. So if it were not for Medicaid expansion, even the poor of the Commonwealth wouldn't even have access to that type of health care. And then, of course, I'd have to be reminded just the other day, as I gave closing remarks at the annual reception for the Virginia Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. These are your top researchers in the Commonwealth of Virginia at the major universities doing research on medicine, science, engineering. And in their 2017 report and conference, there was a keynote speaker by the name of Dr. Anthony Fauci. And in 2017, he warned of an oncoming pandemic.
Wow.
In 2017, and warned us all to fund necessary programs and structures so that we will be able to deal with the situation. And we know the rest is history, because 45, when he came in, decided to cut funding to those areas, saying it was unnecessary.
And also, I want our listeners to understand that he continued to fight in the courts against those very programs that could have helped to blunt the effects of the pandemic here in Hampton Roads and really across the country that affect all Americans.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me, even now that we've overcome 45, we still have work to do with this pandemic that has jumped in our face. And how soon we forget that early of 2020, when we first learned of this thing coming and about to wreak havoc, what position we were all in caught flat-footed because there was no national plan rolling out to deal with it. And so there was shortages of ventilators, shortages of masks, et cetera. And then the effects of the pandemic have left us in such a way that disproportionately we find that people of color are getting the virus, becoming contaminated on ventilators disproportionately, and dying disproportionately.
That's right.
And so, again, rewinding to how important it was for us to begin testing, one of the things we were able to lead an effort on is to make sure that in those communities that normally wouldn't get the attention that they should, we wanted the test to be brought into the communities so that people would have access to testing.
Right.
And we had to thwart a plan, or at least help some folks with their planning as they thought about bringing the National Guard into African-American neighborhoods, with folks with fatigue zone and trying to see who would come out of the house and be tested.
Right. Talk about the wrong message, right?
Yeah. So that would have been an abysmal failure, I believe. And so we were able to partner with organizations like the NAACP, Urban League, Black churches, and the like to make sure that we were able to have some folks that people in the community felt comfortable with.
That's right.
And so we were able to get folks tested in the communities where we know most likely would have been left out. You take that model and overlap it to where we are today, talking about the importance of the vaccine. I was just talking to a friend of mine just the other day, Dr. Keith Newby, cardiologist who has an urgent care practice.
Right.
And one major problem that we see right now is this rollout of the vaccine. So we say we want to get to those most vulnerable communities. We say we want to dispel the myths about vaccines, and we want African-American participation. And yet the first wave of the plan did not include some of the medical doctors, urgent cares that are treating African-Americans. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem. And so I'm working hard to change that model to make sure that the testing gets to the individuals that need the testing.
Delegate Hayes, you bring up a very important point, but give me 1 second. Let me let our audience know that you're listening to State of the Water. I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville, and this is our Year in Review 2020, and we have with us Delegate Cliff Hayes, who represents the 77th District here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You listen to Blazing Hot 91. We're talking, you mentioned the issue of changing the plan and including African Americans and the way that the medical field is handling African Americans and Black peoples during this time of the pandemic, which kind of shifts me to the pandemic itself, bringing out the issues with and us having a reckoning with racial and social justice. I have a family member who is an ER physician, and just talking with them the other day, they're having to order resources from Switzerland right now. Ventilators, masks, wow, and the like. And this is just for one hospital group, because the state itself, not here in the Commonwealth, but another state, didn't have a plan, in order to deal with this wave that we're seeing. But also, they talked about the fact that how they see, and with them being the only ER physician in their hospital, okay, they see how their white colleagues treat African Americans when coming in, and as opposed to treating whites. And we saw this play out in a national story where a Black Jamaican doctor who was an internist physician was treated terribly by white physicians in Indiana who, just basically brushed off her symptoms. She's like, I'm a doctor. I know what I'm experiencing. But they brushed off as saying that she's seeking drugs and so forth. And she ended up dying of COVID. Now I've given an example of two Black doctors who see it on the ground. And unfortunately, one of them lost their lives. Here in Hampton Roads, and from your perspective, in retrospect, how has racial and social justice in our area bubbled up to the top? And what are some of the things that you believe have changed and things that we still need to address?
Yeah. This whole matter of health is just a part of the pie, if you will. If we think about the social determinants of health,
yes,
disproportionately throughout our community, I think my grandmother used to call it the black tax.
We still get taxed. Right. Yeah, we still paying it.
On every turn. Just as the example that you gave, here you have a professionally trained practicing physician in the ER. And, this doctor's told otherwise. They have the experience, the knowledge, telling you what they feel that they know in their heart of hearts and with their education. And yet people still want to ignore what's being said. I've even heard these things about folks in the African American community being viewed by hospitals and doctors of another community that we're more tolerant when it comes to pain.
Yeah.
And so therefore, they, don't issue the type of medications to deal with the symptoms and the problems that we have as we approach medical care. And so it's a horrific thing when you're talking about that, when you're talking about, as I mentioned earlier, jobs, and folks are working 3 and 4 part-time jobs just to put food on the table and make it all happen, because no one of those employers want to step out and hire you full-time because they don't want to pay the benefits that go along with it.
That's right.
And so here you have this parent that's catching the bus in the morning, early in the morning, to arrive at work 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, working until 12 noon or so, catch another bus or a cab to go to the second job, and cleaning up the hotel rooms, and then getting off from work and going to the restaurant to wait table or cook in the kitchen, and then return home late at night to try to spend some family time with the kids, all to try to make it all happen. And so that's got to take a toll on a family structure at some point. Yeah. And that's what we see, because in the classroom now the kids are not getting the follow-up that they should get in terms of spending time with the family and parents, going over the homework or the school lesson of the day, etc. And Lord knows we need some kind of assistance here now in the era of COVID, where some schools were going back virtually.
That's right.
And so I've been in situations in years past talking to principals of some schools in my district where the principals were pleading with us to try to get some kind of equipment to the students and training because, say, for instance, in the third grade, we're required to take SOL tests by computer. The principal at one of my schools that has the third grade was mentioning to me they spent most of their time teaching kids what a mouse was, what a keyboard was, while other communities where kids, there's a computer in the home already, they could jump right into preparing for tests.
That's right.
And so, I mean, it's just a ripple effect all the way around. And we've got to do all we can to try to tear down many of the barriers in the African-American community. And so we do all we can to deal with that. This legislative session would be quite interesting, given that we probably will only be in session for about 30 days.
Right.
Imagine what it takes in order for a bill to become law, right? So just looking from the House side, we have to have bills get assigned to committees. The committees have to pass that legislation out to get to the floor. The floor vote will take place. If it passes the floor in the House side, it then goes over to the Senate, and the Senate will deal with it in the same manner in a committee, and then they will vote on it on their floor. And if it passes both houses, then it goes on to the governor for signature.
Right.
That's quite a hurdle for any piece of legislation to have to try to go through. But we have 30 days this session, and so it's going to be somewhat of a warp speed trying to deal with that.
Yeah,
now,
and also in the next half hour, we're going to talk about the agenda for the next legislative session, not only for the 77 in the Hampton Roads area, but also as a whole for the state and what the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus plans to address this particular session. But before we end this half hour and go to a commercial break, I want you to talk a little bit about the impact of the protests that took place here in Hampton Roads and also the tearing down of the monuments that represented over a century of hatred, discrimination, and division, especially with African Americans.
Yeah, this summer, not for these, I was thinking yesterday, everybody has a body-worn camera nowadays.
Right.
We talk about it in terms of...
You are being recorded, my brother. You are being recorded.
Yeah.
That's right.
We talk about it in terms of law enforcement having body-worn cameras. Well, this time, everybody in this day and time has a body-worn camera. They're called cell phones, smartphones, and everybody's recording. And if it were not for the young person recording what happened to George Floyd this summer and sharing it on social media before any of the outlets or law enforcement agencies could twist the story, that video had gone around the whole world, and nobody could look at the video and say that that was right. How that police officer put his knee on the airway of George Floyd, there was no way that anybody could come to the conclusion that that was right. And so coming off of that were a series of protests all around the country. And I just want to thank NSU for being a partner with some of the major universities. I think it was Norfolk State, ODU,
yes,
Virginia Wesleyan, and of course our youngest daughter, Felicia, who attends William and Mary. They were a part of this march hosted right there on the campus of Norfolk State. Yeah. And I was there to walk along with Dr. J and Bishop Kim Brown and others, and all of these athletes from all these schools in the name of fighting against racial injustice. That opened up the opportunities for the legislature to address things. So in our special session, there were a number of bills that were proposed and passed into law to deal with inequities. And here we are still dealing with many of them about to be have the opportunity to actually implement and begin to deal with those things in the Commonwealth even now. So
yes,
we'll be dealing with those things because it's a law now in the criminal justice system that we no longer tag people with felonies that may have made a stupid decision to pick up something that belonged to someone else.
Right.
In Virginia, that was capped at $200. So if you had $200 item belonging to somebody else, you were tagged with a felony.
Wow.
That has stayed in place for going back to the 1980s.
Again, so many great changes because people came together over this issue of justice, racial justice, social justice, and now we got to go to social healing. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be right back in just a moment to discuss the year in review.
Blazing Hot 91.
Your blazing hot music spot.
I'm DJ INC from the Top Rope.
I'm Cheryl Wilkerson.
Make sure you wake up with us.
Monday through Friday.
6 a.m. to 10 a.m.
With the Blazing Hot Morning Show.
I'll tell you why every day's a holiday.
I've got your entertainment and your news.
And we've got the legendary DJ Heart Attack.
With the Blazing Hot Morning Shower Mix.
And live on-the-spot weather and traffic updates.
So go ahead, start your day with us.
Monday through Friday.
6 a.m. to 10 a.m.
With the Blazing Hot Morning Show.
Right here.
On Blazing Hot 91.
Turn your radio up.
Get ready to celebrate 2021 with us in style.
Let's get this party started.
Blazing Hot 91. It's gonna blast out this year with the ultimate.
Don't believe me, just watch.
New Year's Eve virtual day party for hot DJs. DJ INC, DJ Scandalous, DJ E, and DJ Silk. Hosted by King Carter and Ron TV. Watch us live. It's gonna be the hottest party of the year. The ultimate New Year's Eve virtual day party. Blazing Hot 91's New Year's Eve virtual day party. Thursday, December 31st at 2 p.m. Find us on Facebook at Hot 91 Online.
Happy New Year.
Welcome back. You're listening to State of the Water, and I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. And we have with us Delegate Cliff Hayes here to discuss the year in review 2020. Now listen, 2020 has been one for the record books, a once-in-a-century pandemic, a reckoning with racial and social justice, and now healing, and of course, a year where we end the Trump era. And to help us break it all down, we have Delegate Cliff Hayes, who represents the 77th District here in Hampton Roads. Delegate Cliff Hayes, thank you so much for joining us again here on State of the Water. The first half hour, you gave us phenomenal insight about what this particular year has done and all the issues that we've gone through. But now we've got another year that we're coming up with. And this particular year here is 2021, and we got the legislative session. And you started talking about this session being shorter, only 30 days. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about more of what goes on in a regular session and the challenges that you guys face in this particular session coming up?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Claville. And as we go into this 30-day session, there will be significant challenges as we try to introduce legislation, get it passed, and get it on to the governor's office and the governor's desk for signature. But we always are mindful of the fact that just as last year, the governor can call us back into special session. And so just as he did last year to deal with the budget because of the uncertainty as we closed out the regular session, we had planned to come back during the summer to deal with the budgetary items.
Right.
But then again, the issue of racial justice needed to be addressed. And so we dealt with those matters during that special session as well. And so as we head towards the January session, there are a number of issues, in particular the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus agenda overall. We have not released to the press what that agenda specifically will be. So I'll just say in general terms, many of the issues that we have addressed for generations continue to be matters that need to be fixed, need to fundamentally be changed. We're at a place in this country of what I believe standing on the tiptoes of another Reconstruction. And so we need to fix many of the systems and many of the systemic processes, legislation, and procedures that generate the type of disproportionate outcomes that they do. And so when it comes to the issues in education, health, housing, infant mortality, doulas, and the part that they play in the midwifery of the birth of black children.
Yes.
Our HBCUs who have been state-funded but woefully disproportionately funded by our Commonwealth in the past. And I might put a pin there to say that we certainly appreciate all, I think it was Sister Mackenzie Scott.
Oh, yes.
Made these generous donations to nonprofits and the HBCUs around the country. But to have Virginia State receive $30 million from her, Norfolk State $40 million, and to say no strings attached.
Right.
It's a wonderful thing.
But you know what?
We got to keep our eye on the ball because our HBCUs and as a Commonwealth, as a state, we don't have anything to do with the fact that generous gift was given to Norfolk State. We have to approach this as blind to that gift coming to the university and deal with the disproportionate way that Norfolk State and Virginia State have been funded in the past. We have to correct that.
Yes.
Other universities get state money, but they get these private donations all the time.
Right.
And so it is, I think, ridiculous to hear people whispering about, well, perhaps they don't need the level of funding that we were planning to try to give them this time.
Right. And you know what?
How ridiculous is that?
You hit the nail on the head, because one thing that we actually discussed this on the show last week about the level of funding and how Mackenzie Scott name goes up there with the Rockefellers, with the Carnegies, with the Ogdens and the Vanderbilts, all who have made a major impact in philanthropy to higher education. But this does not erase the fact that we are still a state-funded institution that do the heavy lifting of educating our students. And some come from major challenges. Some are first generation. Some are the best and brightest. But we overwhelmingly do the heavy lifting of educating our citizens and making sure that they go out into society and become productive. And we still need the state help and the state funding to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to do that. And I'm just so happy that we are in the majority as a party, but also the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus is represented in the money on the money committee. So on the House side, I'm on the Appropriations Committee. Delegate LaSharice Aird is on the Appropriations Committee. Our local Delegate Jay Jones is on the Appropriations Committee, and then our dear friend and brother, Pastor Dr. Luke Torian, chairs Appropriations. And then on the Senate side, we have Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator L. Louise Lucas, and then we have also leading things on the Senate side is Majority Leader Dr. Mamie Locke on the Senate side. And so they're there to help fight on the money committees. Delegate Lionel Spool is another. Senator McClellan is over there fighting hard. I mean, we are well represented, and so we're going to do everything we can to take care of our HBCUs.
Phenomenal. In this upcoming session, there's a lot of things on the table, but last session, there was a historic legislation passed for funding for HBCUs, especially for Norfolk State. We received the largest funding in our history. But then COVID hit, right? And a lot of legislation was passed, but it was put on the back burner. What happens to that legislation that was put on the back burner going forward?
Well, I think what you're referring to is as we came out of session, we had passed the budget going forward. And, of course, there was historic funding earmarked for Norfolk State and Virginia State. But because of this pandemic and not knowing what we were facing in terms of the economy, we weren't sure if the revenues would come in at the same tune that we had planned or budgeted prior to us learning about this pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so we had a process of what we call unallotting those revenues and locking them in place until we could literally get a chance to see what the economy is doing. And so that's one of the reasons why we had the special session, one of the reasons why we came back later in the summer to look at what that should look like. And, of course, the governor and his finance team, the Secretary Lane and others have put together what they deem necessary as a reforecast of what things will look like. Now, I have to say, because of the way that we have managed that, and I'm so proud of Delegate Torian and our appropriations chair, one of the things we've been able to do, even under these circumstances, is for Virginia to maintain its AAA bond rating.
Yes.
You cannot take that for granted because, of course, depending on what your bond rating is, that's going to determine at what rate that you can borrow money. And the lower that rating, now you have to pay more interest on the monies that you borrow, thereby allowing for less opportunity for you to take care of what you need. And so since we've been able to maintain that AAA bond rating, we're able to borrow at very low rates and even refinance some of the debt that the Commonwealth has already had, refinance at lower rates, freeing up opportunities for us to take on more debt and build more items that are needed in our capital situations across the Commonwealth, including our state universities and our colleges. And so we're just excited about that. I mentioned about the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus under great leadership of our chairman, who's also a Norfolk State alum.
That's right, Delegate Bagby.
Chairman Lamont Bagby. A tremendous amount of savvy leadership. Man, let me tell you about his leadership. I am proud that Senator Lucas and I carried a bill that's going to help out with jobs in Hampton Roads last session on the House side, and Senator Lucas on the Senate side. We carried a bill to allow for offshore wind off the coast of Virginia Beach and Duck, North Carolina, that will be pumped into the Commonwealth, creating enough clean energy for over 1 million homes. And so, but the supplies, the repairs to those wind turbines have to take place somewhere. And rather than for us to be waiting on some of those parts to come in from overseas somewhere, and we can actually repair right here in Hampton Roads. And so we expect Norfolk State, ODU, Virginia Wesleyan, Hampton University to all be partners in training folks to get ready for these jobs right here in the Commonwealth. So we're excited about that.
Absolutely phenomenal. Keeping our graduates here, keeping our dollars here, and growing our economy. I mean, that's what our public servants should be doing, and that's an example of what you're doing. And again, that's just how we move forward. That's how we progress our area, and that's how we talk about not just Black lives mattering, but Black dollars mattering to our economy as well.
No question.
Absolutely phenomenal. Now I want to segue into an issue of this particular year coming up. Now, we know that we just had a presidential election, and we currently have President-elect Joe Biden, and we're approaching the end of the Trump era. But it's not over yet. We got about 30 days, and it's proving to be, it could be chaotic. As a matter of fact, he hasn't signed the omnibus bill and the stimulus bill just yet, and unemployment benefits for some have run out because of the lack of signature. Can you talk to us a few moments about what do you expect from the Biden and Harris administration, and in retrospect, what is the lasting memory or impression of the last Trump era?
Well, let me just start out by saying we cannot be lulled to sleep by the gains that we see symbolically. In other words, it has to be more than looking at black faces, and certainly we're excited about the very intelligent vice president-elect that we have, our dear sister of the Divine Nine.
Who is an HBCU graduate.
Yes, sir. Straight from Howard University, representing Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. We're so excited about what hope that gives to our young people, that they can rise and be anything in this country. And that's a wonderful measure of hope, if you will. But we have to also understand, just as President Obama, as the President of the United States, for 2 terms, yet we still had a Black Lives Matter movement. And why is that? It is because these systems are so strong and so inherently deep structurally that it has to be about more than just the election. The election, don't get me wrong, is extremely important because we're able to get legislation passed. But now all of those individuals that have been working for generations in our government systems and departments and agencies, those folks are still around. And so we've got to dismantle much of the structural changes in order that all people can be all they can be, just as we sing often with our Black National Anthem, lift every voice and sing.
That's right.
Not being echoes, but allowing each person to have a voice. That's extremely important to the systems and the changing of those systems in this country. And that's what you'll see going on even under a BidenHarris administration. Here in the Commonwealth, actually 2021 means election year.
That's right.
It also means redistricting. And so the districts in which we all represent in the House and Senate, the district in which our congresspersons represent, all of that's going to be redrawn this year. And so it's important that those districts are done fairly. And so according to the laws that have changed this past November, which dictates that a commission will be assigned with drawing of the districts and naming who the individuals will be to draw the lines. So much so, unlike in the past, every decade, the legislators were choosing who to represent. And now the people will be choosing who they will be represented by having fairly drawn districts. That's number one. Number two, we have a gubernatorial race, we have a lieutenant governor's race, and we have an attorney general's race.
Yeah.
in the Commonwealth. And right now, I think for governor, even already announced, there are a total of 7 candidates running for governor. On the Republican side, there are 2 individuals, in my opinion, both too extreme and too oppressive in nature. One is just a little louder than the other. One speaks much louder. One speaks calmer, but still follows those same oppressive tendencies that we've had to deal with for over 20 years as they've been in control.
Yeah.
On the Democratic side, of course, each one of these parties will have an opportunity to choose their person that they're going to nominate in the race. And so right now on the Democratic side, there are 5 candidates. There's Jennifer Carroll Foy, there's Lee Carter, who are both delegates now. And then, of course, there's our Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, will be running for governor, and former Governor Terry McCullough, who by Constitution in the Commonwealth could not run for re-election succeeding himself. He could not run consecutive terms. After serving as governor, stepped away for 4 years and was jumping back in, and does have the right to do so. And then, of course, Senator Jennifer McClellan. All of them will be seeking the Democratic nomination. And we'll see how that all just kind of unfolds. On the lieutenant governor side, on the Republican side, there are 4 Republicans seeking lieutenant governor. On the Democratic side, there are a total right now, I believe, of 8 individuals seeking lieutenant governor.
Right.
And, that's a crowded field, if you will. But at some point by the primaries, we're going to have to hone right into who that individual will be.
Very quickly, you mentioned the crowded field in lieutenant governor, but I want to go back to the governor election because you bring up a very important point. And before we get into it, I'd like to everyone to know that we have Delegate Cliff Hayes here representing the 7th and 7th District of the Hampton Roads, who's also an NSU alum and a friend of the university. And you're listening to State of the Water here on NSU's 91.1 Blazing Hot. Some people say that this is the time and the age of the black female. So for so long, not just black people, but more specifically black females have been pushed to the back of the line, and now they are moving to the forefront. You mentioned the election of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and many other women who've really shown their worth. We've known their worth, but they've shown their worth to the rest of the world. Stacey Abrams and others, Mayor Bowser, and also the mayor of Atlanta, Lance Bottoms, and we see now that Virginia has 2 black females who are more than qualified to run, but now you have this well-established white male who was former governor who jumped back into the race and the like. Some are saying that this is a time for the black woman and maybe this is not the time to go back to the old guard again. What are you hearing, and what do you think is going to be the effect of this particular Democratic primary based upon that issue?
Well, just like I mentioned earlier, we got to keep our eye on the ball of the policies, of the structures, per se, that need to be changed. And so as I look at the Democratic field now, who's announced, I know 2 of these very fine African-American females. These black women are extremely smart, intelligent, capable individuals in Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy and Senator Jennifer McClellan. Both attorneys, both very sharp, intelligent people. I know them personally. So either one of them, actually, I believe, would serve well. Then you have former Governor McCullough coming back into the picture as well. I believe that during his first term, he did everything he could for the black community and trying to support things. it's somewhat gratifying to see the work that he had done.
Right.
That led us right up to the edge of Medicaid expansion. He was fighting for it the entire time that he was in. He actually was able to restore the rights of more individuals in one term than the history of all other governments combined. With that type of an agenda, that type of work, when it comes to funding schools, when it comes to our transportation network. I mean, we often forget and have short memories, but remember how awful it was sitting in traffic on the peninsula trying to traverse I-64 and get back and forth from Richmond and so forth and back on the peninsula. Somewhere in and around Newport News, between Newport News and
Williamsburg. Yeah.
It was like, clockwork. You could count on sitting there for a good hour.
Trust me, I travel that route often. I know what you're talking about.
But I remember then Governor McCullough, putting his foot down on the administration and folks at DBDOT. Say, listen, before I leave out of here, you all going to widen this road. I don't care what else is on the agenda, but you're going to open up from Newport News, heading on through Williamsburg, from 2 lanes. You're going to open this thing up to 4 lanes.
Yes.
And I was there when we cut the ribbon to do so. So he's been, a hard worker. He's been raising money for the caucus as well. And we'll just have to see how this whole thing shakes out. He's already, not for himself, but for the caucus, the House caucus anyway, raised over $1 million for the delegates of the Democratic Party of the General Assembly. Raised $1 million for them, not him, but for the delegates and their races. And that's an early way to start out and help out. So we'll just have to see, because we have to maintain the majority of the House. We have to maintain the majority of the Senate. And one of the things that are going to be different this time than 2 years ago is that the senators are not running with us on this cycle. So there's going to have to be enormous energy from the top of the ticket to help out with those individual delegate seats to get us all, one, to maintain the majority in the House and Senate, and then to maintain the top 3 positions. It's interesting enough that I believe we have a 5-vote lead, not 5, 6 vote lead, 55, 10 vote lead, 55-45 in the House of Delegates, a closer margin in the Senate. But we have people running for other positions this time. And what does that mean? To have all of these people, Jennifer Carroll Ford, Lee Carter, Sam Rasool, Hala Ayala, Elizabeth Guzman, Mark King, Martin Levine, all of these people are running for statewide office and not seeking re-election in their seats. So we have to figure out that piece as well. Thank goodness for a primary, because we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. That'll happen.
Right.
Once
In
that
June.
primary, it's going to be time to turn towards our election.
That's it. My friend, Delegate Cliff Hayes, again, thank you so much for being a part of the NSU community as you are. Thank you for being a friend for State of the Water, a friend of the Center for African American Public Policy. And thank you for the hard work that you're doing in the legislature. And again, I couldn't think of a better way to end this year than having the person that helped us to start State of the Water on June 28th. And once again, you gave us so much insight, so much great information to think about. And again, we thank you so much for all that you've done.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right. God bless.
All right. Be blessed.
Well, that's it. 2020 is definitely a year for the record book. A once-in-a-century pandemic, a reckoning with racial and social justice, and now for social healing, and the end of the Trump era and the beginning of a new governor's era. One thing that 2020 has shown us is that we can make it. It's shown us that when we work together, there is nothing that we can't do. And it's shown us that the Spartan Nation, no matter what the challenge, we will remain strong and become victorious. And I just want to thank all of you out there for being a supporter of State of the Water. I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. Happy New Year to you, and we'll see you in the new year next Sunday. God bless.